It's time now for Keeping It Real with Ollie Gann. Brought to you by Cuck's Farm Service on Magic 105.5 WMGH. Now, here's your host, Ollie Gann.
So many of us are so busy, right? We find ourselves juggling so many things at seemingly the same time or in such short spans of time. It's a lot of times hard to handle. It's hard for us to feel like we need to keep up with all the things that are going on in our lives. Well, I've got a couple of special guests on with me here today on Keeping It Real by phone. They are Christian music artists in the contemporary Christian music industry, known as Seth and Nirva. And they are going to share with us how they juggle being on tour, making new music, married life, and also having time for family life as well. So I encourage you, keep it here on Keeping It Real, as I've got Nirva, who also is known for being part of the Diverse City Band for Toby Mac, and her husband Seth, as they join with us here today in Keeping It Real.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness,
All right, and as I've already mentioned, I've got Seth and Nirva Reddy on with me here on Keeping It Real today. They have taken some time out of their very busy schedule to be willing to do a phone interview here on the show today. Seth and Nirva, how you guys doing? What are you guys doing right now? Are you guys currently on the road, or are you in studio? Are you enjoying some time together or time with family? I know the summer's kind of over. Where are you at in your lives and with your singing career right now?
First of all, thanks for having us on the show, Ollie. We're honored to be on there today with you guys. Well, I think you asked what we were doing this very moment. We've been running around slinging food in the kitchen, trying to get ready. We're cooking for our family tonight. It's our kind of duty food night because my grandma had back surgery, and we're just running around trying to get all this done. So we actually just threw some meat pies in the oven right before you called. So that's what we're doing.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun, and it's busy at the same time, but that's treasured time, isn't it?
It's awesome.
Oh, yeah. It's been good. We've been getting a lot of family time in lately because we had the hurricane come through, and their power was out for like a week, so everybody was staying here. For some reason, ours came back on day 2, so we've been good family time in, making good memories, but yeah, it's been pretty crazy around here.
All right, so I want to start off the line of questioning with this question, and that is, what specific thing, if you could only pick one, and I know that this is probably going to be an unfair question, but if you could only pick one specific thing that you would want people to come away with upon listening to your music, what would it be?
Ooh, that is an unfair one.
I'm sorry.
No, it's great, though. It's really great. We love these questions.
Yeah, man. I would say it depends on kind of the season and which album we're doing. I would say our latest album, Never Alone, the theme we wanted people to walk away with that is just to be encouraged that God is still with us. He's still on the move. And to really just get in the game. We actually have a song called We Won't Back Down off the album. It's one of our favorites, and we're just getting ready to put a new remix version of that song.
And we're going to be playing that here today, by the way. So we're going to be playing all kinds of songs from you guys, and that definitely is one of them.
Oh, awesome. Well, yeah, and that I would say right now that's kind of been on our hearts a lot. We did young adult ministry for a few years, and we just recognized that many 20-somethings and people in general in the church in the West were just kind of feeling pushed to the margins of culture, and we thought people needed courage, not to fear, not to retreat in these times. And that's what that song says, is God is moving, God is doing something new all around, so we won't back down. And it's not a call to be mean or nasty or pugnacious. It's actually the opposite. It's a call to rise up in love as the church, but to stand firm on biblical principles as we reach out to people with the gospel.
Well, definitely want to hear so much more in regards to not only your music and your passion for music. That's going to be so evident. That's going to be a given, I imagine, as we continue on here with the show today. But there's going to be a number of other questions that I want to ask you guys as to how your faith is so important to you personally, not just in your music, but also in your daily lives. And so I'm really looking forward to having that shine as well, as I'm sure it will throughout the show.
A song to sing, a song that angels cannot. I have been redeemed, and I gotta say, I love you. No one can touch my heart like your love has touched my heart. Nothing can separate me from you.
And you know everything about me, still you love me unconditionally. Oh, 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 hey, oh,
Can you describe a bit of the background of your love for Jesus? And when did it start? How has it grown for each of you? And how has it grown for the both of you together over the years?
Wow, good question. My walk with the Lord didn't really come to fruition until I was in my, I would say, early 20s, late teens. I grew up in a home that we knew there was a God out there, but we didn't do daily life with him. We reverenced him during those times of, you say grace, or you go to church, and that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to college, I joined a choir that would travel to different churches and do concerts, and there was a particular church that was having a revival that night, and I'll never forget, I heard the gospel message, and I was at the altar before they even offered Christ. I knew that I was living the kind of life that I think I depended on music and the pleasures and certain relationships to fill a void that was deep inside of me, and Christ entered my life at that point. But it would be a process before I really understood what that meant when he became Lord, and he was not only Savior, became Lord. So you know how you say the prayer and you dedicate your life to the Lord, and then there's things that need to happen in order for that to really take root. Bible studies and church attendance and community and accountability and all that stuff. So
Sure.
God began to transform my life. And when I met Seth, he also introduced something into my life that really changed me. It's loving God with all of my mind, not just my heart, and knowing what I believe and why. And so my journey has been one that's still going. Jesus is everything to me, and through his teachings and understandings, I see the world, I do life, I do relationships. So everything about life springs from that well for me.
That's a great testimony, a lot of power in that, just as any testimony does, a legitimate testimony of a faith in Jesus Christ. Seth, what about you?
Yeah, man. First, I would say that for both Nirva and I, Christ is everything, It's like music and assignments and gifts all come and go, but it's like that's everything in our lives. He's everything to us. And thankfully, I grew up in a good Christian home. I walked up and I think it was a Awanas club or something at the age of 6
Mm-hmm.
and to accept the Lord. But you know how it is. You kind of grow up and you go through life. I met a youth pastor, though, when I was about 15 or 16, and he really saw something in me begin to pour into me, and I owe so much to him. He actually became my best friend and was the best man at my wedding later on. That, for me, was the starting point of really, really coming to know the Lord. In college, I really began kind of a dark period of doubt and really wrestled intellectually with the faith. And it threw me into kind of years of study and research. I ended up starting to go about halfway through a master's degree at Bible in science and religion. Started in AP biology for me, just kind of the threats to what I understood the Bible to teach with origin stories.
Right.
Over time, though, it kind of, you answer one question, it leads to another. You answer one question, it leads to another. But I would say, though that process was very difficult at times, even emotionally, it was one that really, really strengthened my confidence in the Christian worldview and the person and work of Christ. And so it was actually through that I think I learned that God prepared me to do young adult ministry and to help other people who are facing even much more hostile circumstances these days in the culture. So it was a little bit before it became popular for college professors to try to tear your faith down. But thankfully now I feel like that's part of our ministry, is to help equip people in the church to, like Nirva said, not only know what we believe, but why we believe it. And I think that for me, at least, as I've studied that, I have family members who, some of which have walked away from the faith, kind of similar backgrounds, but thankfully through that process for me it was a strengthening process, and now I get the chance to go around and share the gospel and why I think that it's not only helpful, but it's actually true, and it's helpful because it's true. And so for me, that's kind of my story.
Two very distinct stories, but again, the common denominator is really what matters, doesn't it, is how Christ enters a life, transforms a life, and whether if you kind of grew up in a church home or you don't, or whether if you grew up in kind of like a well-to-do or more moral kind of background, or whether if you grew up in a dark background, when Christ comes in, it just makes everything stand out, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
For sure.
So true.
Yeah. Now, how does your love for Jesus then coincide with your love for music?
Coincide. It definitely fuels and is the meaning behind the art of it. You praise what you love. You give attention to it. You like to talk about it, spread the news. When you go see a fascinating movie, you just go, hey, have you seen so? And so from that place, you just want to share it.
Right.
And so, but we were doing young adult ministry here and traveling together. But when we first married, we would do a lot of travel apart from one another and then reconvene in the middle of the week. Prayed that God would open doors for us to do music together and travel together. And the label contacted us and really wanted to just work with us and just take our music and our art and help us to share it with the church. And so what do? We share stories from Christ's perspective in our songs. We share experiences. We share the good times, the challenges, the reason why we press, the reason why we go through things, and then the reason why we live and move and have our being. So it's definitely, for me, the lens from which I see music, understand its purpose, and also the love behind the kind of songs we sing.
Mm-hmm. And what you mentioned there, I think, is a lot of what I call where the rubber meets the road kind of issues.
Yeah,
and
there's definitely that.
Christ meets us there. But music just is such an amazing thing to me, especially listening to the testimonials that Christian music artists give, whether if I see something on YouTube or I hear something when I'm at a concert or something that I'm even able to read about. A lot of these songs are not done from a point of, well, let's put together an album so we can make some money. These songs, the thing that I gather is these things are birthed from a walk and from being in sweet communion with God. And sometimes it's in the middle of being in broken places. Sometimes it's in the middle of climbing the mountain. I mean, whatever it may be, but it's amazing to me how you guys have such stories that are so relatable to the common man. It's just amazing to me. So Seth, maybe if you can elaborate on that a little bit as well, from what Nirva was talking about, how, music is just such an integral part of your lives, not just because you love to do it, but because it's stuff that you're going through, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Music, you're dead on. Music is such a gift. It's a way we get to express, like, the deepest parts of ourselves. And it also it's a teacher. Like, when we do a lot of worship leading and the songs we sing, for good or bad, music is a teacher. You can use it negatively to teach, false principles.
Right.
But for us, it's a chance to teach truth, but it's also a chance to express yourself and it's an avenue to experience God. There's so many beautiful things. I think was it in Job where it says the angels sang as God created. They're singing throughout the whole Bible, and I was just recently reading this book called A Case for the Psalms by N.T. Wright. He's really, really, sharp scholar, but he said, there's some things that you just can't even express in scholarship. They have to be sung. And I think there's a richness to music it's such a beautiful part of God's creation that lifts us out of the mundane. It can translate us to almost to another realm. I would say like I said, it's a great avenue into God's presence and to a great way to express adoration for who he is and what he's done. And so for us, I don't know if that exactly answers the question you asked.
No, actually, yeah, I think it does. And, there was no really, right answer. I think you could have taken that any number of ways. You answered it, I think, in your own personal way, which is probably the most meaningful way. And that the thing that I want to have come across, I think, as well as I'm sure the two of you do, is to demonstrate and proclaim how real this love that you have for Jesus, but even more so, the love that Jesus has for us. Because I think for a lot of folks out there, and I know there are a number of folks that listen to this show that don't know Christ, they listen from time to time, or some of them even listen on a regular basis, and they're intrigued with the message of the gospel, but it quite hasn't captured them yet. And the more stories, the more testimonies that come forth of the reality of the love of Christ can only encourage and can only help people.
God is moving. God is doing something new all around, and we won't back down. We will not be shaken, church awaken now. We won't back down. We will not be silent. We will not be silent, and we won't back down. We are not forsaken. Love is breaking now. We won't back down. Says God is with us now. We won't back down. God is moving. God is doing something new all around, and we can't stop now. Sing, God is moving. God is doing something new all and we won't back down. This day is the day that you've made. Father God, have your way. You are in control. This day is a gift that you gave. We believe when you say you are in control.
You know every moment, every dream, everything concerning me, and you are in control, never letting go. And what can keep your love away from me? You are in control. The universe is yours, and by your word you hold it all together.
We stand by the power of your hand. We believe in your plan. You are in control.
You know every moment, every dream, everything concerning me, and
Every promise, every word, all is working for my good. And
you are in control, never letting go. And what can keep your love away from me? You are in control. The universe is yours, and by your word you hold it all together. You hold it all together. You hold it all together. You hold it all
hold it all together. Oh, you're in control. You hold my life.
Oh, when you hold my world,
All my days are in your hands. Oh, you're in control. You hold it all together. You hold it all together. You hold it all. You hold it all together. Say all of my dreams, yeah. You hold all of my plans, yeah. You hold all of my days up in your hands. Lord, you're in control.
You guys obviously have very busy lives, okay? How do you have and keep God at the center of your marriage? I mean, you guys are on tour. Nirva, you're on tour with Toby Mac and part of the Diverse City Band. And then the two of you are doing music together. After all of that, all the touring, all of the making music, all of the time in the studio, all the blood, sweat, and tears, as Toby Mac says in one of his songs, how do you guys keep God at the center of your marriage? How do you keep that on the for sure?
Wow, that's such a great question. You know, once you experience Christ and you're in relationship with Him, He has a way of letting you know when you've gone too far and you're not close enough and your life is starting to wane away from Him. And so with us, we have to choose to make it a priority. And we know when we have it, when we fall short, it's evident and it shows.
Do you guys keep each other accountable as a couple, as husband and wife? You guys keep each other accountable, don't you?
Yeah, you know what? Marriage it just comes with all that accountability. Marriage is such a mirror, and so it's such a beautiful, natural process of helping each other grow if you allow it to be. And so, you know, it really is. Christ really is our center, and it's just good that way. We see on other marriages where people have taken their eyes off Christ and His way to do life and His way to do marriage, and it just suffers. And so we learn from others, and we learn from the Bible, and we learn, you know, when we got married, people blessed us with lots of great books to study, and we would read them together, chapter by chapter, and then discuss it, and it would be such great spiritual nuggets. And so if you make Christ the center, you kind of learn how to forgive and learn how to just love. And, you know, there's this book that I was reading his name was Alan Bloom, and one of the quotes he said, you know, America will learn to love when she loves to learn again. And so when you walk with Christ, it's such a powerful learning experience that He takes you from, okay, if you're in a rut, here's how you get out of it. If you're hitting a tough spot, here's how you make it through. If you want your marriage to be strong, these are the things you put in place. And so for us, it's life. And we try. We just make it a priority. We choose to. Because that's the only way we survive. Not that we're perfect at it.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't think anybody is. But so then it would be fair to say that your marriage has been under attack then, too, has it not?
Oh, you know, this road we walk called life, it comes with challenges. I mean, look at around the world today. There's so much going on. And so but Christ encourages us in His Word. He says, you know what, take heart. I have overcome these things. I'm still on the throne, and we can feel like we're walking through the valley of the shadow of death. He's there with us. And so we draw on His presence in the Scriptures and His promises, and He encourages us each and every time.
Yeah, and it's amazing, too, at least it's something that I've come to find in my life, too, is, and I'm sure you guys can relate, there may have been a time where we feel like we're walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And then because of how God has worked in our lives and how He has furnished us and matured us, then there's a similar instance or an instance that carries the same level of heat that's coming at us. And it's like that valley of the shadow of death that used to be doesn't even really feel like that anymore, because it's like we're like more than conquerors, you know?
Come on now you're preaching.
Okay, well, I'll get back to the questions now.
Oh, it's great.
What do you see as being so abundantly necessary when considering the racial tensions and divisions that are going on within our culture? What is it going to take for people to come together? Is it even possible for people to come together from different ethnic backgrounds? What say you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll try to simplify it, because that would probably take one of those long books to answer.
We probably need a whole nother show, right?
Right. But I think there are some kind of simple keys to start with. Yeah, we did this song called Brother on our album, and it talks about looking in the face of your enemy and seeing a brother. And even when we did the song, it was brought to us by our label, we were like, man, what a haunting concept, and can I really say that with truth? Can I look at someone that's against me and see them as made in the image of God and not just as an enemy? And we know that that's what Christ calls us to do, is to pray for our enemies and love them. So at the end of the day, we decided, well, we want to become that kind of person, even if I'm not there yet. And I think there's something in that song that's a lesson for any issue, including the racial tension. And we've seen God do miracles even in our own family. I had some family members who were not happy about our situation being an interracial couple, or going to speak to me anymore. And God did a miracle and actually gave this person a vision, and they came and repented to Nirva.
Wow.
So I've seen the power of the gospel to bring real reconciliation. But I think the first place we want to go to is understanding humility. I think clothing yourself in humility, that's what Apostle Paul talks about that a lot. You know, we got to put that on, and we got to let that grow into our character. Then we can even be open to hear, because the truth is we're eventually going to need to separate fact from fiction and get into the details. But if you don't start with a posture of humility, you won't be able to do that very well. And then I think the second thing is love, as defined by the Bible. You know, we've lost clarity with regard to what real love is in our culture today.
See, now you're preaching. Spot on.
Yeah,
Spot on. There you go.
Our definitions of love and freedom and those things like that is a big concept. So love, you love someone or something when you are set toward its well-being. It's not there for you to consume for your own benefit, but you're set toward seeing it flourish. And so I think when you come with humility and love and you say, man, you know what? I want to come from that place first, and I want to look across the divide, whether it's political or racial or whatever it might be. Even if I'm right in a situation, I still can come in humility and love and deference. So that I would say that's the starting point, and that's rare to find in these battles. But I do think we can embody that in the church. And I think that this is our moment to shine, in essence, because we, you know, as the culture gets more and more divided, more and more hateful and angry, I think that's where we really have a chance to be that city set on a hill, just being who we're called to be. Now, unfortunately, there's a book, it's a pastor named Derwin Gray in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's written a book called The HD Leader. He has a real heart for multicultural ministry, and he actually references, I can't remember if it was in the 60s, what the year was, but there was a real influential book that was written for Christians, and it was the guy meant well, but he was arguing for homogeneous ministry. And he said, you know, if you want to reach Spanish people, make a Spanish church and go reach them and let it be Spanish. If you want to reach elderly people, put them together with older people. That way they'll want to do it. Now, Derwin Gray actually comes directly against that, because he said part of the gospel is to be intergenerational and to be multinational. And so he said, unfortunately, that's taken root in the United States, and a lot of our churches reflect that. And so we don't end up being a picture of what we're called to be to the culture, because they say that Sundays are the most segregated days of the week, and the church is unfortunately playing a part of that. So I think for us, it's like, you know what, let's recover the idea that the gospel, we're called to be in groups with people that we're not necessarily just like. And, you know, we can learn something from our elders. We can learn something from people that aren't from our tribe or nationality. And I think that God, the book of Acts is like it is on purpose. In the book of Revelation, we talk about all tribes and tongues and nations gathered together as one. Like I think that's part of the heart of God that we miss out on when we focus too much on homogeneous ministry. And I understand it. Like, you know, we planted a 20-somethings ministry within a church, and it was geared toward 18 to 30-year-olds intentionally to make them feel comfortable and like they could have something in common with their peers. And I get that, but I noticed after a while I started trying to get people that were in their 50s and 60s to come in, because I said, you know what, it's a little out of balance if all we're ever around is one type of group. And I think that's something to think about, at least.
Yeah, well, I think that hits it pretty much on the head. You mentioned how, you know, we can learn from those who are older, and that certainly definitely applies. I mean, that goes without saying. Not only age, but different socioeconomic levels, different ethnic backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, all of that definitely applies.
When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother.
When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother.
I see my brother. Yeah,
eyes to the lies I was taught. Gotta searchlight my soul, cause some of them I bought into. They grip like shadows in my mind. Unknowingly they shaping how I'm viewing humankind. Reaching past our differences, the colors we were suited in, the places we were born and the cultures we were rooted in. Children of God, ain't that all of us? How we gonna hate when compassions were called to us? Love, oh love, you got me covered. I'm letting go of enemies and holding on to brothers.
I've got basically one more question for you guys, and that is, what is the biggest gratification coming off of a concert experience? And now, real quickly, I'll mention, I was on the Jesus Free Cruise, but I've been to a number of concerts. Obviously, I've seen Toby Mac and the Diversity Band probably a half a dozen times. I've seen a bunch of other acts of through the years. What is the biggest gratification coming off of a concert experience for you guys as you perform as Seth and Nirva and people have a chance to tune into your music and be exposed to your ministry?
Wow, that is a great question. Again, for me, let me process that. I would say for me, just pointing people to Christ, just having them lift their eyes to the King of Kings and experiencing his presence, his comfort, his joy, praising him, adoring him, doing that alongside my very best friend in the whole world. What beats that? No,
I don't know. Other than knowing that it's a guaranteed one-way trip, to heaven. That might be the only thing that beats it. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. So you're basically saying the worshipful experience of it all and seeing people lift their eyes, lift their hearts, lift their everything they've got heavenward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, that's it. As we do it, let's all look to him now. Isn't he awesome? Isn't he worthy? Isn't he everything? And I do that regardless. Toby show, worship team, group meetings, small groups. But to do it with my soulmate is another level. I've even had a buddy in Diverse City said, "You have fun with us, but when you're with Seth, you're a different person." So just worshiping the Lord together has been such a sweet treat for me.
And I tell you what, that's when you get a comment like that, I bet you that's something that you won't forget for the rest of your life. That's one of those landmark comments, isn't it?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Seth, how about you?
Yeah, man, I'd say probably the same thing. I love different crowds or different expressions, which is fine. I think my favorite is when every now and then we get those crowds and you can just tell they're with you, fully engaged, and they're into the music, which is great, but they're into like Nirva said, with really worshiping and connecting with God. And when it kind of transcends you as an artist and it becomes like this, everybody's together and God is sort of orchestrating it. You're just catching the cues almost from him, but everybody's like turning to him and worshiping him together. It's energy and expression. That's probably the most special time.
Well, I tell you, it's been a blessing having the two of you on. It's pretty much everything I thought it would be and more.
Aww.
You guys are awesome. Your guys' love for the Lord is abundantly evident. It would have to take, I think, really a blind or deaf person not really to be able to tell that. Unfortunately, the Bible kind of does say that. The preaching of the cross is foolishness to them that don't believe. But for anyone that's out there that is seeking, that has a heart that's even remotely open to the truth of the gospel, it's really indisputable. It's undeniable how God's been at work in your lives. Now, real quickly, I did say that was my last question, right? So I'm not lying here. I got another question, but it's coming from someone else. Okay, I got my 8-year-old daughter in studio here with me, and she is. I mean, I don't want to slight you at all, Seth, and please know that, but she is a huge Toby fan. So she is tickled to death to be able to talk to the both of you. So I'm going to let her come on here for just a second. And why don't you say hi here real quick?
Hello,
Hi there. What is your name?
Madison.
Hi, Madison. How are you doing?
Good?
Oh, it's so good to make your acquaintance. I'm so glad you got to go on the cruise. Did you have a good time?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sure you want to ask her something, though, especially Nirva. Go ahead.
No worries.
How are you doing with Toby Mac?
How am I doing with Toby Mac? You know, I saw Toby 2 weeks ago at a conference. So when you went on the cruise with your dad, that was actually my last show with him. I had decided that I had traveled with him for a very long time, over 15 years. And so I wanted to spend the rest of my time and energy traveling with Seth. But I tell you what, traveling with Toby has been a blast. We've seen over 20 countries into most of the states, most of the United States, and I tell you, doing concerts with him has been so much fun, and I can't think of how I earned that opportunity. God just blessed me to allow me to do that, and I tell you, I can never thank God enough, but it has been a blast, that's for sure. What's your favorite Toby song?
I don't know.
Oh, it's okay.
Remember how I asked you earlier how if you could pick one thing for people to come away upon with listening to your music, and that was an unfair question, you just asked an unfair question.
Oh, for sure. For sure. There's a vault of many that we can choose from. That's great.
All right. Well, look, I actually thought that she was going to ask you a different question because she actually has a deep desire in her 8-year-old way to be a Christian singer. And I thought she was going to ask you what it was going to take to be a Christian singer, but that quite didn't come out. So, hey, God bless you guys. And I tell you that, Nirva, that was news to me. I didn't know that at all. But I tell you what, if God be in it, who can be against it? We've played Great Are You, Lord, Unconditionally, We Won't Back Down, You Are in Control, and of course we played Brother. We've got one more song to play from you guys. You guys pick it.
There's another song called Be With Us that also would be good in this situation.
All right, well, I tell you what, you came up with Be With Us first, so that's what we're going to roll with.
We are calling out to you, be with us, Lord. We are calling out to you, be with us, Lord. We are calling out to you, be with us, Lord.
I wanna be closer.
Only you have the remedy. I need you to be with me. Oh, we need to hear from you. Speak to us, Lord. Oh, we need to hear from you. Only you have the answers. Only you have the remedy. I need you to be with me. Only you have the answers. Only you have the answers. Only you have the remedy. I need you to be
You've been listening to Keeping It Real, hosted by Ollie Gann. Keeping It Real is brought to you by Cuck's Farm Service. Join Ollie G Sunday mornings 8:30 to 9:30 right here on Magic 105.5 WMGH.